is right, folks. That is right. This is a new episode of Justin and Donald Save America, and that is the AI song that Justin promised last week. He said he was going to go down a rabbit hole with AI-generated songs, and he did, and I thought it was stellar. So we've got a full 2.5-minute version of that. Maybe we'll play at the end of this episode. Check that out. But yes, welcome back to Justin and Donald Save America, where we uncover the hidden threats shaping our future, expose the agendas behind them, and arm you with the truth. Today, we've got a special episode because we're just going to be poring over the results of a new poll that we commissioned with Rasmussen Reports that is pretty shocking results. And we're going to spend a lot of time going through all of this because these were released in 3 phases. The first set came out Friday of last week. The latest 2 came out this week. And so we got all the results. They're all public. And we're going to talk about them, Justin. So right off the top, Justin, you want to give a little insight into kind of what we were aiming for when we came up with this poll and just kind of the outline before we start drilling in? What do you think?
Yeah, well, we wanted to do was do a poll that was just of younger voters, so 18 to 39. So this national survey we did with the Heartland Institute and Rasmussen Reports. Rasmussen did the polling, and we wrote the questions at Heartland. And the idea was, let's just look at what young people think about socialism and socialist policies and authoritarianism and the reasons, and let's try to see if we can get at the reasons behind why they hold some of these views. So we didn't know exactly how much these voters would support socialism or socialist candidates, but we wanted to know among the group, however large that was, that did, is there anything going on in their lives that we can maybe associate with their support for socialism? See if there's something going on there behind the scenes. That was the idea. And what we found in the poll, as everyone's going to see here pretty soon, is that support for socialism and socialist candidates and authoritarian policies are insane and off the charts among younger people. It's even fairly high among people who classify themselves as Republican. And the reasons for why that is, or I should say, our theories about why maybe people are drawn to socialism, young people, I think have been confirmed by the results of the poll as well. There were really clear connections between answers to certain questions about what's going on in people's lives and the challenges they're facing and things like that, and support for socialism. Mm-hmm. So we're going to get into all of that here pretty soon, but that was the idea. This is a real mission accomplished moment for us. Let's hang the banner somewhere, because this really was we set out to find out how supported socialism and socialist politicians are, how authoritarian young people are, and if there's any reason for it that we can find. And we were able to do all of that in this poll. I think it's remarkable.
Yeah, the only thing that I'll add to that is, there's this narrative that's kind of being spun out there, or maybe it was up until this poll release, that like the latest generation of kids are actually a lot more conservative. Like they're swinging towards Donald Trump or whatever. Usually the youth are a little bit more on the left and more open to socialism and all of that, but not this next generation. And we kind of wanted to see how true that really was. And as you'll see, not holding up. That narrative isn't holding up. And I think that's much to the concern and worry of the kind of politicians out there, the Republican Party and whatnot, that might have thought that they had the wins in their sails, but these poll results might show a different story here. So should we just jump into the first batch here, Justin?
Yeah, let's jump into the first batch. So the first set of poll questions we did. So the way we do polls, Donnie and I have written probably 30 something polls for Rasmussen Reports, with Rasmussen Reports. And when we do the polls, we write 15, 20 questions, somewhere in that range, when you add in the sort of standard demographic questions that go in there. And then we publish them as 3 separate polls, usually, sometimes 4, depending on how many questions there are and how different the questions are. It's because you usually publish them around certain theme. So the first published batch that we did talked about support for various candidates, Trump approval rating, the 2028 potential matchups, and we can just go over that stuff like really quickly because I don't think that's the meat of this at all. But the biggest surprise in this group was Trump approval rating among younger people, 48% if you add strongly approve and somewhat approve together, which is only slightly lower than disapproval. And for younger people, 18 to 39, that is a huge, I mean, that's a really, really strong result. So that's the one piece of good news. If you're a sort of a free market person, you're going to get out of this whole poll. So take it while you can get it.
Well, not only that, but it does kind of, it kind of puts this a different kind of look on some of the other results that you'll see, because you almost see it as contradictory to some of the other results that we're going to go over. But I think what in reality, it's actually revealing of a kind of a much larger trend that's at play here. So we'll get into that. But
it's also really good because it indicates that we didn't get a weird sample of people that's like really far to the left.
Sure.
You know, because if you got a sample where it was 85% of the people hate Trump, then even among younger people, that's not a very good representative group for America, right? And then if you get skewed results on all these other questions, then it makes sense that you would see these. So it is really important for people to keep in mind throughout this whole thing. Yeah, 48%, about half of the people polled said that they have at least somewhat approval of Donald Trump. And for younger people, that's really high. We asked about if the 2024 election, in the 2024 election, who did you vote for? This is just a demographic question. It was 45% Harris, 41% Trump, 7% other, 6% didn't vote, 1% not sure. So again, pretty good representative size. It leans Democrat, but it's not like insanely Democrat. And that's what it should lean Democrat if we're trying to get a representative group for younger people, because younger people voted for the Democrat, you know, by a much higher rate. So that all works out. Presidential primaries. We could spend a lot of time on this, but we're not going to.
I thought it was funny. I just thought this one was funny. You know, it's
read it off. Yeah, read it off.
Yeah, the Democratic Party's presidential primaries were held today, and the candidates were Kamala Harris, AOC, Bernie Sanders, Gavin Newsom, and Zohran Mamdani. Who would you vote for? It's just the fact that 36% picked Kamala Harris, I thought was just kind of funny. It's like, this is the best they can do. But whatever, we can blow past
it is actually really amazing. Gavin Newsom at 9%. I mean, that is so sad. That is so sad, because Gavin Newsom has been in the news more than any other Democrat by far over the past since Trump's term started. He's been the main guy. And the fact that he's getting all this free publicity, Kamala Harris is basically not even talked about anymore.
Sure.
And she's still dominating him in this. And she was one of the worst candidates of all time. And so
how did her book do?
I don't know. I don't know anything about that book, to be honest. I mean, we should look that up. Yeah, we should do a whole episode on just Democrats' 2028 chances. Let's do that.
Yeah, that would be good.
And we'll do the book in that. Okay, so then the next one, let's just skip over this fundamentally good evil one, because well, we don't have to skip over it, but I just don't think it tells us much of anything.
No. Yeah, I agree with that. The 28% saying it's fundamentally good, the United States, 17% saying fundamentally evil, 50% saying mixed. You know, whatever.
Yeah.
Younger people saying mixed in terms of morally good and evil about the United States. That's not a shocker.
No, that's not a shocker. And I would have thought that the fundamentally evil thing would have been higher, given how negative they are about the US and other parts of this poll. So it's kind of weird, but there's just not much to say. It doesn't tell us much, the result we got. Okay, so the first really big one that does tell us a lot. Actually, let's skip this one and go to the next presidential election one. Then we'll come back to that that won. Okay, so next presidential election, 2028. Would you like to see a Democratic Socialist candidate win the 2028 presidential election? Not run, but win. 53% of all the people that we polled said yes. 27% said no. 20% said not sure, which means even if all the not sures broke for the no's, it would still be a minority. And obviously that's not going to happen. So if forced to choose, I bet at least, let's say half, let's be generous, half go to the yes category.
Sure.
You're looking at around 63% maybe. So this is really an overwhelming level of support for a Democratic Socialist president.
And again, let's compare that with the 48% that had a strong or somewhat favorable opinion of Donald Trump.
Yes.
You know, like there's people that gave him a favorable thing, and then on this question said, yes, I would like to see a Democratic Socialist candidate win next time around.
And to that point, in the, if you go in deep into the data, which is not on the screen, but I'm reading off of it, you'll see that among the people who said they voted for Trump in the 2024 election, so these are people who said, yep, I voted for Trump.
Okay.
35% of them said that they wanted the socialist in 2028. That's a big group of people. That's a big group of people. Very problematic for Republicans going into the next election. So then we asked the people who said yes to the socialist president question. We asked them, among the following options, which is the biggest reason you would like to see a Democrat socialist president win? And then we gave a bunch of options. You want to read those off?
Yeah. So housing costs are too high. Taxes are too low for corporation. Taxes are too low for wealthy individuals. They either you want single payer health care system. The economy unfairly benefits older, wealthy Americans. The economy unfairly benefits large corporations, or some other reason, or not sure. So of those given reasons to choose from, the largest portion, or the plurality, I guess, would be 31% chose housing costs being too high. The next picked one is that 17% saying that the economy unfairly benefits older, wealthier Americans. And then 15% saying the economy unfairly benefits large corporations. So putting those three together is well over 50% of the reasoning for wanting a Democratic Socialist as president.
Yes. Yeah, it's over 60%, I believe. My math is right. Yeah, it's over 60%, 63%. So huge percentage said one of those three answers. And what they all kind of have in common, or I say kind of because housing costs are too high isn't necessarily about fairness, but I think it is. I think most people who answered that question would say it's not fair that housing costs are too high for them, but people who already have houses were able to buy them at lower prices, right? So I think there is an element there of fairness. I think they all have that theme. It's this idea that the current economy is really, really unfair for younger people.
Yeah.
And because of that unfairness, it's not just, this is really important. It's not inequality in terms of wealth. It's about fairness. That's the fundamental thing. Notice that they could have said that the taxes are too low thing. That would be more about like people need to pay their fair share. But they didn't necessarily say people need to pay their fair share was their main complaint. Their main complaint was the housing costs are too high. And so they're not the same thing. And then they could have chosen taxes are too low instead of the economy unfairly benefits people, but they chose the unfairness issue as the main thing. So throughout the rest of the poll, because there's another question that we're going to get to later that explicitly says, do you think things are unfair? And almost the same percentage of people said, yes, I think it's unfair.
Yeah. And another thing to point out here, the one that I thought was interesting, is one of the lowest reasons, in fact, the lowest specific reason on here in terms of, people choosing it, was 8% who want single payer healthcare system. Now, this is the thing that's been driven as like the largest offering program from the Democratic Socialists for I don't even know how long, as long as I've been paying attention.
As long as I can remember. That's
and
for sure.
That got the lowest, so it's not even about just like, the handouts or, the terrible state that our healthcare system is in and needs to be taken over by the government or whatever. That's the lowest chosen specific one on this list. So when it comes to like the fairness aspect is like head and shoulders above just like another government program.
And obviously we couldn't put an infinite number of options in here. And so you could say, well, maybe you just didn't put an option that people liked in there. But that's why we put one of the responses was for some other reason. Yeah. We gave them the ability to say, oh, no, actually, it's something else. You guys are not even close to why I think this way. But only 5% of people picked that. The vast majority said, nope, it's one of these. Yep, that is the reason. And so I think we did kind of nail the generally speaking, the biggest reasons why young socialists or young people who like a socialist presidential candidate, why they are drawn to them. It's one of these big thematic things that we have in here. And I think the housing costs too high, the taxes, the unfairness and the housing costs being too high, and even the taxes being too low. It's about fairness. All these things are about fairness in their minds. And I think that's really important. So then earlier, let's scroll back up. So with all that in mind, one of the first really shocking results that we got in this poll, like really totally, completely shocking results, was we asked, do you agree or disagree? Major corporations like healthcare, energy, and big tech should be nationalized, which means taken over by the federal government, to give more control and equity to the people. Historically, they only do this in countries that are like on the verge or in the middle of or just had a communist or socialist revolution. Like that's typically the only times this happens for the most part, with some rare exceptions. But like this is, Venezuela nationalizing the oil industry. Like that's the kind of stuff that you think of when you think of this. It was 76% of people said they either strongly agree or somewhat agree. 3/4, including the vast, overwhelming majority of people who said they are conservatives, Republicans, the independents, the Democrats, liberals, everybody said yes to this question.
The most shocking thing about this, I mean, that alone, 76% over 3/4. But the most shocking one was that they strongly disagree. 5%. More people were not sure than strongly disagreeing with this. I mean, even the somewhat disagree means that they're like, well, there's certain aspects that are probably all right, but so only 5% were staunchly like, no, this is not a good idea.
And
only
remember,
5%.
And remember, 48% of all these respondents said they think Trump's doing a good job.
Yeah.
So again, there's something going on here where we have people who like Trump, but they also want socialist policies. And this is a theme we're going to see over and over and over again. And we'll get to our theories as to why that might be happening later on. But we've got more. This is not the craziest in this set. It gets crazier. So do you have the second set of questions?
Yeah,
can we pull that up maybe?
Yeah, this one I actually thought was the last set is probably the most shocking stuff, but this one is the most interesting to me. I've done on the show, I think we've talked about the idea of like the rentership nation and the idea of like young people not being able to buy a house. In the future, you'll own nothing and be happy, that sort of thing. And I think a lot of the answers in this are very kind of illustrative of what's going on with that whole mindset. So let's get into these ones.
So and just so for full transparency, Donald wrote a lot of these questions in this set. So it's not a shocker that he's especially interested in these results. Just got to be honest with the audience here. So
transparency is good.
Yeah, transparency. How would you describe your current financial situation? Okay. This was a brilliant question to ask. So this was very smart by Donald. Come up with this. We asked doing well, getting by, struggling, in crisis, not sure. The idea being we just want to know, because again, remember, one of our goals was to try to find out if there's something going on in people's lives that maybe we can associate with support for socialism. So what do we see here? Doing well, 24%. That's the one really positive response. All the other answers are at least kind of bad. Getting by is not a very positive thing. To say getting by, that was the plurality answer, 38%. The second most common answer was struggling at 29%.
Right.
So and then in crisis was 7%. So doing well was the third choice in terms of the, popularity of answering the question. And if you add up getting by, struggling, and in crisis together, you get 74%, which just so happens to be almost exactly the same as the percentage of people who said they want to nationalize whole industries to give more control to people and equity and all this stuff. So this is a huge driver, I think, of why you're seeing people turn to socialism, young people. Things are not going well for young people. And at least that's their perception.
Right.
And people have to understand, because a lot of times, you and I talked about this many, many times before we did this poll question. We have this tendency when we bring up issues related to young people, we work with a lot of people in the movement who are older than we are by 10, 15, 20 years. Because Donald and I, we're actually in the demographic set here. We're in our 30s. We're toward the end, but we are under the age of 40. So we're in this group. And when we bring these things up with a lot of people that we know in the movement, I don't know, is 60, 75% too high of an answer? But it's something like that. Well, you'll get this response that's like, basically, young people are a bunch of whiners, and they have a bunch of useless degrees. And
avocado toast and spending their money on new phones instead of whatever.
Yep. And they expect everything to be handed to them, entitled. And so, of course they think this. Of course they think they have it bad. And there's this, whether that's true or not. Okay. And I don't think it's totally true. And I don't think that the young people saying they have it the worst ever is totally true either. I think it's somewhere in the middle, right? But
let me just say, because I've been on this for a long time. Like, you can go back to like way old In the Tank episodes, me talking about this and getting pushed back by my co-hosts talking about this, right? And I think that, like, for a lot of people, and probably a lot of people listening to this video, that they think of like these millennial type or this Gen Z or whatever person that's struggling, and they picture some blue hair, septum pierced barista that's complaining about how they're not being able to, make a living or whatever when they work 2 days a week or something. And of course those people exist, right? Of course they do. But I feel like for every one of those, you have 50 people that are playing by the rules, doing what they're supposed to do, getting a job, going to college like they've been told all throughout school that they need to do if they're going to make anything out of their lives, accruing $75,000 to $100,000 in debt, and then they're sitting here taking our poll saying that they're struggling or in crisis. And for us to just like dismiss it as like, you're just not working hard enough, I think is so like you're shooting yourself in the foot as a political movement, like this is these people's perceptions of their lives. And we're just like, no, forget you. I think that's a horrible strategy.
I totally agree. Totally and completely agree. And I think that it's also it's not only a bad strategy. I don't think it's fair, because to use housing as a good example, and we don't have time to get into like all the details of this as a full topic. We'll do a housing crisis one another time, but a video on that specifically. But just to give people a sense of why I think it's not completely fair to complain about how young people feel. If you look at indexes that track the average cost of a home, the average price of a home relative to the average income or the median income, the current the current ratio of income that you need to earn to the price of a home is 7 times. So what that means is you need to earn 7 times the annual salary, 7 years worth of salary to equal the average sales price of a home. Historically, for most of the recent history in America, it's between 4 and 5 or 5 and 6 when it's going really high. It's never 7. It's almost never 7. The only time it's even come close to 7 in the past is right before the 2007, 2008 Great Recession housing market crash. Okay? That's the only time it's ever come close. Then on top of it, you have mortgage rates higher today than they've been for the most part, on average, for the last 25 or 30 years. So the interest rates are way higher than usual, and the price of the home is way higher than usual relative to what people earn. So if you're a young person, it is more expensive, or anybody, it's more expensive to buy a home and pay your mortgage today than at any point in modern American history.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're a young person and you're just starting out in life, and a lot of young people have massive amounts of student loan debt on top of it, and they've got huge amounts of student loan debt, and housing has never been more expensive, rents are super high, and they're thinking to themselves, how am I ever going to buy a home and build wealth for myself?
Right.
And if I can't buy a home and I can't build, I can't buy a home and I can't build wealth, then, how am I going to have a family? How am I going to have like the American dream home with a picket fence and a dog and the kids and all that stuff? I can't afford any of this. I can barely afford my rent. And then you have older people say, oh, suck it up. And it's like, well, when you went to college, you could afford to work your way through college back when that was a thing. You can't do that anymore in most places in America. You can't work your way through college. That's nonsense. And the average cost of a home was way lower than it was back now. And a lot of older people who bought homes a long time ago, their houses have tripled, quadrupled. They're 5 times the value that they were when they bought them. They're swimming in equity. Their mortgage rates are low because they refinanced when it was like 0, 1%, 2% mortgages, 3%. And now they're telling younger people, oh, just suck it up. It's like, well, that really is not fair.
Well, not only that, but it's like, I've been in the conservative movement or whatever for at least 10 years, 10 plus years. And it's like one of the things that it's constantly talked about, even going back further than 10 years, is all this government action, government intervention, these government programs, all of these things that we'll talk about, the conservative movement, we'll talk about are damaging, damaging to the dollar, the depreciation of the dollar, all these regulations that prevents the red tape that prevents building of houses, all of these things that are too much taxation, all of these things that are a drag on the economy. We all say these things, but then when we're like, oh yeah, I'm really feeling the drag of the economy, it's like, no, you're just not working hard enough. Like, I don't understand that disconnect. I really don't understand it. Why can't both things be true? That it's damaging to the economy and there's people that feel that damage.
Yeah.
Like, why is that? So then when these people, like this financial situation one, even if you were to take out the getting by one and just focus on the struggling or in crisis, that's 36%. That's over a third of young people that are struggling or in crisis. That's how they describe their financial situation. And you've got, if you have one side of the political aisle that's basically saying, well, you just brought that on yourself by not working hard enough. And you've got the other political side of the political aisle saying that, yeah, the deck is stacked against you. Vote for Zoran Mamdani. He's going to solve all of your problems. What side is that person in crisis going to go to? They're probably going to go to the one that's saying, yeah, I understand, acknowledge your pain. Like right. It's a huge political implications here.
Yeah, without a doubt. The next question is similar in a lot of ways. Which best describes your current personal life situation? We ask if they're thriving, doing well overall, few ups and downs, feel stuck or uncertain about your personal life. Do you feel lonely, disconnected, or emotionally drained? You're in crisis and feel mostly negative about your personal life, or you're not sure. Very similar to what you just said. 33% said stuck or uncertain, lonely, disconnected, or in crisis and feel mostly negative. So you add those 3 up, it's 33%. That's the same, very similar to the previous one. If you add up struggling and in crisis on the financial side, that's 36%. So very similar. 65% said they're either thriving or they're doing well overall, but with a few ups and downs. So again, a third of younger people they feel like they're lonely, they're struggling, they're in crisis, they can't pay their bills, they're worried, things are not going well. And what are we telling them, right? To your point, we're not talking to them in a way that respects the fact that that's how they feel about things. And I think that's a really important problem. And then to go back, the next question, circle back to the unfairness issue. Do you think the American economy is unfair to young people? 62% say, yes, it's unfair. So again, it's only about a quarter of young people that think the economy is fair, that are living a good life, that everything's going well for them, and that they feel confident about everything. It's around 20 to 40%, depending on the question. And over 50% think there's a lot of unfairness, there's a lot of problems and issues, and then a chunk of that group is like feeling like they're in crisis or things are going really bad in their life. That's again, like around 35, about a third of those people. So in line with all of that, we ask another question. How confident are you will own a home at some point in the next 10 years? This one, people actually answered a little more positively than I would have thought, to be totally honest.
Yeah, me too.
29% said that they already own a home. 25% said they are confident they will own a home. Discouraged but still hopeful was 21%. So if you add those up, those are all kind of positive. Some of them are very positive responses. Some are just at least kind of positive. It's 75%. And then about a quarter said they're either not confident or they're convinced they'll never own a home. Right. So there's still some people in there that are discouraged but hopeful. Exactly. I guess it depends on what you mean, but how discouraged are they? I think they're a little more
leaning more towards discouraged or leaning more towards hopeful in that answer. Yeah. Right. So just anticipating like the comments that are going to be in this video or something. When we're pointing this out, and that there's people, a large portion of young people that are taking this poll and reporting that they're in crisis, they're struggling, they're lonely, all of these horrible things or whatever. We're not implicitly supporting some sort of socialist big government solution to these issues, right? Like I feel like it's like if you point out some problem, then you must mean that you're in favor of this solution or whatever. Not the case. Absolutely not the case. Justin and I'm speaking for you, but I'm pretty confident in this. We still believe in the free market. We still believe in individual liberty and voluntary interaction and all of those things, and unleashing those things, taking off that red tape, stripping those regulations that prevents these things from actually being able to be the engine of wealth creation and all of that. Those are the solutions. Those being able to be communicated in a way that's effective to these populations, I think, is the most crucial thing. And when we're not doing that, then they're going to gravitate towards the actual proposed solutions that are out there that are directly, trying to solve this problem or whatever, which you'll see in all of the next questions that we pull up here. So that's the thing that we're up against. We're not in favor of the Zoran Mamdani stuff. We're not in favor of the AOC stuff. But when there's no other solution on the table to these young people that are palatable or directly communicating to their issues that they find themselves in, they're going to gravitate towards these next questions, which you will see pretty vividly as we go through these next ones.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Okay, so next question. Would you support a law that would confiscate Americans' excess wealth? Confiscate Americans' excess wealth, including things like second homes, luxury cars, and private boats, in order to help young people buy a home for the first time. So, do you want to take people's wealth away from them, like their nice car they have or a vacation home or whatever, to help young people buy a home? 55% said they strongly or somewhat support that. That is absolutely mind-blowing. 38% said that they oppose it. 7% said not sure. That's
Radical
essentially
wealth
socialism,
redistribution.
communism, socialism. Yeah, I mean, this is a really radical policy. It's also like probably completely unconstitutional, I would imagine. It's just literally not taxing people. We're not saying tax them. We're saying just confiscate it. Just take it from them. Give it to somebody else. That's amazing. Just amazing. Next question. Which country should be the most powerful country in the world? We ask America, Canada, a country in Europe, South or Central America, an African country, an Asian country, or the United Nations, which obviously isn't a country, but we wanted to throw that in there. 59% said America. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, well, you know what? I was just happy it wasn't 59% United Nations, honestly.
I had one radio show that I did. The host said, that's better than I would have thought.
Yeah, that's better than I would have thought. Yes.
So 41% of young people do not think America should be the most powerful country. The number one response other than America was all spread out, but the number one was the United Nations.
11%.
Was the number one after America. It was the United Nations at 11%. Canada was number 2 at 5%.
Ugh.
So that means a lot of stupid people out there in the world, apparently.
Yeah, well, okay, so before we go on to our next set, unless you have a specific comment about that, this question, the going back to the confiscating excess wealth or whatever, do you know who's salivating over these results? Is the Democratic Socialists of America.
Yep.
AOC, Zoran Mamdani, all of these Democratic Socialists see this result right here and they're like, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. That's exactly what they want. So
it's exactly what they want. And I thought that when I did a Glenn Beck show on this twice, and he talked about it a lot. He's very into this poll and everything. And one of the things that he pointed out related to that question in particular about the sort of the confiscation of wealth and all of that is, and I think this is right on. A lot of people have wondered politically, like, why there's so many people on the Democratic Party that continue to like double down on socialism when it seems like they're not winning elections with that.
Right.
And his point was because they know the polling shows that eventually, if they stick with this long enough, they will dominate the elections with this. That this is where everything is heading, and they're not going to change course for temporary wins today when they think they can probably win today too, knowing they're setting themselves up really nicely in 5, 10, 15 years and beyond. And I think that's a really good theory.
I mean, come on, let's be real. Like, Bernie Sanders should have won the 2016 primaries. Yep. He should have won the 2020 primaries, probably. But there was some political wheeling and dealing within the DNC that pushed him out both times. What was like the 7 coin flips that all went Hillary's way or something like that back in 2016. Yeah. So, the idea that this is like, so far-fetched that Bernie Sanders isn't going to be like the face, well, probably not him specifically, but like what he represents, be the face of the DNC 5 years from now, 8 years from now, 3 years from now, it's increasingly safe bet the further out time horizon you're talking about.
Yeah, I think that's true. All right, let's go to the third.
All right, yeah, these are this is the most insane stuff here. So like I said, when there's no other solutions put forth on the table and you're only met with these solutions, you see a lot of people throw their support to it. So this one, would you support a law that imposes a maximum annual income gap for individuals? So obviously this question is kind of crafted around the idea of income inequality. The rich people, whether it's, whoever, Elon Musk, getting too much money, that means that there's not enough big piece of a pie for me, right? So let's put some caps on that. So we offered a bunch of options. Yes, I would like to impose a maximum annual income for individuals at $100 million. Yes, at $10 million. Yes, at $1 million. Yes, at 500,000. Yes, at 200,000. Yes, at 100,000. Or no, I don't support any income gaps. And you'll see if you're watching this that if you add up all of those ones that said yes, what do you get? Like 55%, something like that?
For the income ones.
Yeah, what
If
was
you
it?
add up all the income caps, it's 60%, close to 60%, 59.
Yeah, 59, and that's like a rounding thing with the 59.
I think so. Yep.
But yeah, almost two thirds of people saying yes that there should be some caps. Now, granted, $100 million annual income cap or something, like, that's so far out there. I guess in principle, the fact that they want some cap at all should be alarming. But the fact that like 4% said yes, $100,000, nobody should be able to make $100,000 in a year is insane.
Well,
Like, that's insane.
Yeah, and if you combine that with 200,000, it's 8%.
Right.
And in a lot of places, $200,000. I mean, I know it sounds like a lot, but like if you live in like Silicon Valley and you have $200,000, the average house in some of those places in Silicon Valley is like $1.5 million. You're not rich
Like
if
a
you're making
shanty.
$200,000 a year. So it really is crazy, but it just goes to show you that people, they want to put controls on things. They want socialistic policies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Next one, even more insane. We're going to get really crazy here. The last three questions. Should Americans who refuse to use others' preferred gender pronouns face fines or legal penalties, other legal penalties? 17% said yes, a monetary fine. 16% said yes, a mandatory community service. 6% said yes, jail time. So if you add up jail time, monetary fine, mandatory community service for saying the wrong pronoun, you get 40%. 48% said no. So I guess you could say, well, more people said no. Yeah, but 40% said, let's throw the First Amendment out the window. I don't care about that. Let's penalize people for not using the right gender pronoun.
Right.
That is so incredibly disturbing and authoritarian. That is unbelievable. And then when you look at the breakdowns for some of these things, I mean, it gets even worse. It's across the board. I mean, even conservatives, so-called conservatives supported it at a pretty high rate. Republicans supported it at a pretty high rate. Obviously, Democrats did. It's even evangelical Christians supported it at like a fairly high rate, which is pretty shocking. It's pretty awful. People with graduate degrees are one of the highest supports for it. 46% people who had graduate degrees, 46% of them said that. So,
I mean,
this is not good, obviously. It's very, very bad.
I mean, just this baseline one without even looking at the crosstabs, like less than half said no. Like that's alarming. Less than
really
half.
Bad. It's really bad. The next one is interesting. I'll be interested to see what you think of this one. Would you support an amendment to the Constitution that would abolish the U.S. Congress and replace it with a National Citizens Assembly selected by lottery?
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to get at how badly do you want to blow up the system, the existing system?
Right.
15% said they strongly support. 24% said they somewhat support, for a total of 39% somewhat support, strongly support. Right. Getting rid of the Congress, replacing it with random people off the street for a National Citizens Assembly. That's pretty crazy. 43%, so just a little bit more, or 42% said no, and 19% said not sure.
Yeah.
Someone gets me with the not sures.
Yeah, this I don't know. This one is like people willing to blow up Congress, as an institution. Let's not be literal. As an institution, when they nobody even knows what this is. A National Citizens Assembly selected by lottery. Like, You wrote that one, Justin. What even is that? Is that being proposed out there? Because like I've never heard of it, and I would guarantee that 39% of the people that are taking this poll never heard of it, but they were willing to sign up to this because they have so lack of faith in our institutions that they would think anything is better than Congress. So sure, yeah, I'll do that. I'll strongly support that. So yeah, no, this one was alarming to me.
I talked to one conservative who I will not name by name.
Oh God.
And I brought this question up and I said, isn't this crazy? And he stopped me and goes, whoa, wait a second. Read that question back to me again. And I read the question again. And he goes, I think I'm in favor of
that. Do I know this person?
Sort of. And I said, really? Are you serious? You support this? And he said to me, listen, Justin, anybody off the street would be better than the criminals that we have in Congress. And so I was like, you know what? I understand there's a lot of conservatives out there who probably feel that way too. But the idea that you would have 40% of people say, yeah, let's blow up Congress. Now, again, not literally. 40% of people say, let's blow up the idea and structure of Congress and build something completely new with random people off the street. And that would be better, is very telling of where we're at in the country right now.
All right, next one. Would you support a proposal for a new constitutional amendment that would give the United Nations the authority to oversee the Supreme Court and presidency to ensure that Americans' rights are being protected? 27% strongly support ceding national sovereignty to the United Nations. 32% somewhat support that idea. For a nice little grand total of 59% of these young voters saying, yes, I don't trust the institutions of the Supreme Court or the presidency and would feel more comfortable if the United Nations had that power over us.
Because they're so reliable and trustworthy, have no history of corruption.
But again, it's the same. But it's the same thing as the one above this. Like, I don't know what the United Nations is or whatever, but it's got to be better than the crap that we have now. That's the mindset that is so pervasive in our society right now. A complete lack in trust of our institutions. And this is another thing that kind of goes right into the collectivist, socialist, Marxian sort of thing, is, throughout history with these like Marxist kind of takeovers, socialist revolutions, whatever. It's not like an incremental change. Oh, we're going to do this, a couple percentage every election cycle, and eventually we'll have our collectivist utopia in the future. No, they're all blow it up and replace it with our socialist fantasies. And that's what these two things to me look like. They're just like, no, completely get rid of the institutions that we don't trust, and let's replace them wholesale with something else. A citizenry, what was that called?
National
Citizens Assembly.
You know what I thought of when that
question?
I thought of the French Revolution was the thing that came to mind. I don't know why, but it just sounds like something that would have been in the French Revolution. Sure. Maybe it was. I mean, I have no idea. It sounds like something that would be. It just as a reminder, a lot of people got beheaded and killed and blood in the streets in the French Revolution. That wasn't a good thing.
That's for the greater good, Justin.
Then they killed all the people that started the French Revolution. So then that whole thing happened. It was bad. And then they put a dictator in charge after that because everything was too out of control. So then they had a dictator again. And then I think they went back to a king at some point. And then they got the dictator back. So
now they got Macron, so whatever.
Now they're irrelevant. It doesn't even matter anymore. Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. One of the big themes here is blow up the system. We don't like any of it. Start all over again. Put somebody else in charge. I don't even care. It could be a guy off the street. It could be the United Nations. It doesn't matter. Somebody else needs to be in charge. And let's just nationalize whole industries. Let's just take away people's wealth and give it to other people. The system is so unfair in the minds of these young people that almost any action, no matter how crazy it is justifiable in their minds because the system is too corrupt and broken to just reform or get another candidate in there and they'll do the right thing. Nope. Let's just blow it up.
But guess what? Again, let's bring it all the way full circle to that first question, right? This is all being answered by people that gave 48% of people polling here gave Trump a strongly approve, somewhat approve. We go through the crosstabs and find out all the people that voted for Trump that are also in favor of putting the UN in charge and destroying the concept of Congress and all of that stuff. So that sentiment of like, we don't trust the institutions, let's tear them all down and replace it with something else, that is not just unique to the left. That is on the right. I have people close to me that are sympathetic to that. I'm sympathetic to that. I don't have any trust in these institutions. I have no trust in the media. I have no trust in our, the political systems that we've erected and the laws that we've constructed over the last 200 years that have resulted in what we're seeing today on the streets, right? So all of this points to not only, the kind of emerging threat of socialism and collectivism and Marxian ideology on the left, but just this like rampant kind of like populism concept that I think is a very powerful thing, and in some cases is a very great thing, this populism. But when it has no structure or no kind of like moral guiding lines for it, it can run wild. It could run absolutely rampant. So we have to reel this stuff in, and we have to have some sort of moral compass and principles, guiding lights to push this populist movement, that voted for Trump, right? In the correct directions. I think that's going to be like the meta goal of. It should be America, should be everyone listening to this podcast, but specifically us, Merging Issues Center, all of these things, like that's going to be our goal for the next several years, probably.
Yeah. I think that's exactly right. The problem, the most dangerous ideology in a lot of ways, I mean, I think communism is probably the most dangerous ideology that is sort of a popular, even a somewhat popular ideology in the world. Socialism is extremely dangerous. But in a lot of ways, the most dangerous ideology is utilitarianism, where you just have this idea that it's like, well, I support doing whatever is going to make things better, in my opinion, because there is no guardrail for that. It's just whatever you happen to think is the right thing to do. And if you can convince enough people that putting people in jail for saying the wrong gender pronoun is the right thing to do, then you're going to end up with that. If you think just confiscating people's wealth is the right thing to do, then you can do that. That you can do anything, and there's no end to it. It's just this, without some sort of objective moral standard, or at least a goal for an objective moral standard or some kind of guiding principles, you just descend into the ends justify the means. And that doesn't mean it's communism or socialism, because maybe maybe what you want is something different, but it's still, there's no guardrails to it. And it's so easy to slide into authoritarianism because it's all being done with, this is for the good of society, or the good for even not even as the collective necessarily. It could just be, I think most individual people will be better off if we do this or that or whatever. And if you have no line in the sand that says, even if I think everyone would be better off, I'm not going to cross this because there's human rights, and I'm not going to do anything that violates human rights, even if I think in the end people would be wealthier from this model or whatever. If you don't have guiding principles, you will eventually, given the right situation, the right environmental factors, the right context, you will end up descending into some sort of tyranny. And that is exactly where this next generation is heading.
Yeah, or at the very least, unknowingly building the infrastructure that will be used against you. You know what I mean? So that's, these are all very troubling things. We have to take this seriously. This poll, like we said, was released over the last several days. It's getting out there. There's a lot of very influential people talking about this stuff. I mean, Glenn Beck had Justin on for 2 consecutive days, just pouring over these results. I know for a fact that he's taking this very seriously. There's other people, other kind of influential types out there that are talking about this. I've been collecting all of the information just for like our kind of reporting purposes. A lot of people out there, and we also know that there's even people in the highest office that are taking these results very seriously. I don't know how much detail you want to go into that one,
we
but
know we can't give away the details of it, but we know for sure that there are folks in the White House that are looking very, very hard at these polling results and are very concerned by it. So this is definitely this is an incredibly important poll. It's not necessarily the kind of poll that's going to get, it won't get the most media attention of all the polls we've done. We've done others that will have more than this one, but I mean, it's getting plenty of attention, but it's not going to be, the number one. But in terms of its importance and for what we do as a movement, pro-liberty, free market people over the next 10 years, this is a very important poll, and hopefully will be influential in how people think moving forward.
Yeah, I think that this is almost like a reality check. I think this is like a big reality check to a lot of people out there. A lot of people that hold a lot of power and sway and a lot of influence. And they look at this poll, and I think there's a lot of self-reflection and stuff going on, which is a good thing. I think that this is long overdue. These are issues that we can't just paper over and just brush off. We have to hit them head on. So yeah, I think this is a very important poll. Very, very important. All right, Justin, any last words or anything else? Anecdotes, jokes, anything you want to get off your chest before we sign off for the week?
Nope.
All right, fantastic. Well, then I guess we're just going to have to leave you all. Well, no, first, before we get to that, I will say to thank you all for tuning into this. Support the show in any way that you can. Hit that like button, share this content, subscribe if you haven't already. Even leaving a comment under this video helps break through those big tech algorithms that prevent content like this from being shown to more people. Anything that you could do to help out the show would be greatly appreciated. Justin, where can the fine people go to see your fine work?
At Justin T. Haskins on X. You can check out the Justin Haskins channel on YouTube, which is also available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that good stuff. And you can go to justinhaskins.com.
Yep, there's heartland.org. You can go to Stopping Socialism TV on YouTube as well. And stoppingsocialism.com. If you didn't mention that one, maybe you did. But thank you all for tuning in. And we're going to leave you with this wonderful song that is the anthem for, it's not even a theme song, it's the anthem for Justin and Donald Save America. So, if you want to download this on iTunes, I'm sure it'll be there soon enough. But thank you all, and we'll talk to you next time.
From the heartland to the coastline.